Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. For those of you coming from TikTok, we've included the timestamp below so you can pick up right where you left off.
And for those of you already here on YouTube, let's get into another story.
I pretended to be a girl online and started playing on my 3 roommates. Never expected they'd all fall so hard for my fake persona. When I realized things were getting out of hand, I quickly broke up with all of them. But that night, they bothered me with their phones and photos of me dressed. Baby, weren't we good enough? Why did you break up with us? I created different accounts to mess with my roommates. Never thought they'd be so easy to enchant. In less than 2 weeks, they were all wrapped around my finger. Then they started asking to meet in person. Seeing things heading in an unexpected direction, I immediately broke up with all of them. The moment I sent the messages, I heard Mason slide his phone against the floor. I shrank back fast. Seriously? That upset? We only dated for 2 weeks. Dude, you're taking this way too seriously. I cautiously peeked through my bed curtain. What's wrong? I asked, pretending to be innocent. Mason sighed. My girlfriend just broke up with me. He suddenly looked up, staring directly at me. His gaze gave me goosebumps. Why are you looking at me like that? Bro, don't be sad. It's okay. I nervously consoled Mason. I even got out of bed to pat his shoulder. Before I could finish comforting him, the door was suddenly pushed ajar. Tyler, my second roommate, entered with a face full of sadness. As student council president, this was the first time I'd seen him lose his composure. He was clutching his phone tightly. Oh no, I'm in a jam. I should have staggered the breakup times. What's wrong? I asked, knowing perfectly well. Tyler looked at me too, his eyes slightly red. He turned away. My girlfriend broke up with me. Come on, it was only 2 weeks of dating. Why are you all taking it so hard? Looks like I really messed up. There was no way I could let them know I was their online girlfriend. They'd be so upset by me. The thought alone gave me chills. I had no idea they were all such romantics. It's okay. It's fine, I mumbled awkwardly. Meanwhile, my feet were slowly backing away. I was panicking. Tyler turned to look at me. Why would she break up with me? Am I not good enough? I didn't dare answer honestly. I shook my head vigorously. No, you're great. Really great. She doesn't deserve you. Tyler rejected my answer. She absolutely deserves me. Fine. Love-struck fool. Hopeless. Just as I reached the doorway, ready to make an excuse to run, I backed into someone's arms. I turned to see Jake, my last pranked roommate, with tears in his eyes. Again, I asked the obvious. What's wrong, man? Jake just hugged me and burst into tears. I don't want to break up. My girlfriend wants to break up with me. No breakup. Please, no breakup. My hands froze in midair. Darn it. This prank went too far. There was no way to fix this now. I needed to get out of here fast. But Jake was holding me like a big puppy dog, and I couldn't escape. Jake, it's okay. Everything's fine. But Jake wouldn't listen. Then why break up if everything's fine? Why? I laughed awkwardly. Maybe you guys had some issues? Jake's gaze was too intense. I turned away. The guilt was overwhelming. I had no idea they would take it so seriously. If I'd known, I wouldn't have done it in a million years. I couldn't stay here any longer. The room was heavy with sad energy. I have something to do. I need to go, but just my luck. The moment I stepped out, I ran into my admirer, a senior who'd been pursuing me lately, holding a bouquet of flowers. He blocked my escape route. Come on, man. This is not the time for romance. I'm trying to leave the room. But this guy completely missed my desperate expression. I impatiently told him to move. Then he suddenly tapped on my back now. Don't be ungrateful. I'm confessing to you. You should feel lucky. He grabbed my hand, trying to pull me away. Before I could call for help, a sour mint was placed into my mouth, which I happened to swallow. Immediately after, I was yanked away from the senior by a powerful force. Jake pushed the senior to the ground. Mason pulled me protectively into his arms. Tyler checked me for any harm and sighed with relief when he found none. Then all 3 of them took turns confronting the guy on the ground. What kind of clown talks to our baby like that? I nodded vigorously. That's right. That's right. I was just starting to enjoy this drama when they turned toward me. Now, baby, we need to settle our account. What account? What are they talking about? I was smoothly picked up and guided back into our dorm room. Oh, they were even kind enough to close the door. Tyler smiled gently. Baby, can you explain why you have my girlfriend's selfies on your phone? Mason nodded. Yeah, baby. Can you explain why my girlfriend's clothes are in your closet? Jake was even more direct. He held up a gift he'd bought me. I was going to buy this for you. Baby, you said you liked this. Please don't break up with me. Bro, please put that thing away. Why are you bringing that out in such a serious situation? But wait, why do I feel so odd suddenly? Hold on. That senior, what did he press me to swallow? The heat spreading through my body wasn't the metaphorical kind. This was real. Whatever that senior had shoved into my mouth was already doing something. My face felt flushed, my skin prickled, and my thoughts were getting fuzzy at the edges like a TV signal losing its satellite. Focus. I needed to focus. 3 sets of eyes were locked on me. Mason with his arms still slightly extended from when he'd pulled me close, jaw tight, chest heaving. Tyler with that unsettlingly calm smile that student council presidents learn to weaponize in committee rooms and apparently also in dormitory confrontations. Jake, still sitting on the floor, still holding the little gift bag with both hands like he was afraid someone would take it from him. And me, sitting on the edge of my bed, body temperature climbing by the second, brain trying to run 3 different crisis protocols simultaneously. Okay, I said, because silence was going to bury me alive. This looks bad. No, Tyler said pleasantly. This looks very specific. Baby. I hated how he said that word. It landed like a gavel, like punctuation at the end of a sentence I hadn't finished writing yet. Here's the thing about being caught, and I'm telling you this from experience now, unfortunately. There are exactly 2 ways to play it. Option 1, you panic. You talk too much, your voice pitches upward, your eyes dart to the evidence, and you hand the other person every single piece of leverage they need to dismantle you. Option 2, you stay in your seat, you keep your voice at a normal register. You make them show their whole hand before you show a single card. You let them run their mouth until you've mapped out exactly how much they actually know versus how much they're still guessing. I was running option 2. I want you to know I was running it well, up until a certain point. Tyler. I looked at him steadily. Why do you think I have her selfies? Because you are her. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious situation. He sat down on his own bed across from mine, crossed one leg over the other like we were about to have a completely civilized conversation about nothing in particular. I'll give him that. Most people in his position would be yelling by now. The photos are the same angle, same lighting, same slight blur on the left side that comes from a cracked front camera lens. He tilted his chin slightly. Your front camera lens is cracked. Okay, he'd done his homework. My phone was sitting on my desk, maybe 4 feet to my left. I didn't look at it. You never look at the evidence. That's the first rule. Mason was pacing a tight circuit between the door and the window. That was manageable. Mason processed things through movement. As long as his feet were moving, his fists weren't. Jake had migrated fully to the floor and seemed to be treating the carpet as an emotional support surface. The heat in my chest was spreading outward now, climbing into my throat, making my scalp tight. I pressed my back teeth together and breathed in through my nose, slow, measured. Whatever that senior gave me, I was not going to let it win before I did. My lens has been cracked for 2 months, I said. Half the photos taken in this building have probably come from a cracked lens. That's not evidence, that's coincidence. Hers specifically matches yours, Tyler said. I checked the metadata. I let a beat pass. You checked the metadata. I'm student council president. I have standing access to the school's digital forensics lab. He said it like he was telling me the cafeteria hours. I also ran a reverse image search on every photo she ever posted. Nothing came up. No reposts, no prior accounts, no digital footprint older than 5 weeks. He paused just long enough for the weight of it to settle. Almost like the account was created fresh, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I held his gaze and did not blink. All right. So Tyler didn't just suspect, Tyler had built a case. A real one. The kind with receipts. New situation. Time to recalibrate. The thing about a corner is that it only becomes a trap if you accept its walls. I still had options. Mason was pacing, which meant he was processing, not concluding. Jake was on the floor in emotional survival mode. Tyler had evidence against the fake account, but evidence of the account existing was not the same as evidence of me running it. Not the same thing. Not legally, not logically, not conversationally. They couldn't get a confession unless I gave them one. You're not denying it, Mason said. He'd stopped pacing. That was worse, actually. A still Mason was a Mason who had arrived somewhere in his head. I'm not confirming a theory that's still built on circumstantial data, I said, because that's not how evidence works, and you know that. Your face is completely red, Jake said from the floor, his voice small. I'm warm. It's not warm in here, Mason said flatly. I'm running hot, individually. You're lying to us, Mason said. Not angry this time. Tired, which somehow felt worse than angry. Mason. My voice came out sharper than I intended. What exactly are you accusing me of? Say it clearly. He looked at me for a long moment, and then something shifted in his face. The anger cracked open just slightly, and underneath it was something confused and raw and genuinely hurt, and I felt a stab of guilt so sudden and so violent it almost physically moved me backward. I buried it. Not yet. You know what I'm accusing you of, he said quietly. I did. That was the whole problem. The heat was fully in my ears now, a low, persistent roar. The room had taken on a strange quality at the periphery, like I was looking at everything through a thin layer of glass. I pressed my palm flat against my thigh and focused on the pressure. One sensation. Real. Present. Stay here. Think. What they had. Tyler's metadata, the lens match, the circumstantial pattern of timing. What they didn't have. Screenshots, login records, a direct admission, my voice on any of those accounts. No confession, no smoking gun. I was still standing, barely, and with my legs shaking under the table, but standing. And then Jake looked up at me. He still had the gift bag. Both hands. And his expression, his expression, was the specific look of someone who is hoping, with everything they have, that you're about to tell them they were wrong. Not angry, not accusatory, just waiting. Like he had already decided, somewhere quiet and private inside himself, that he was still on my side until I personally told him not to be. I opened my mouth to say something measured and deflecting and strategically non-committal. What came out was, Jake, put the bag down. He looked at it, then at me. You knew I was going to buy this. I guessed, because I stopped. Tyler's smile sharpened by exactly 3 degrees. I watched it happen in real time. Because you what? He asked. And that was the moment the heat stopped being manageable. It spiked, sudden, violent, disorienting, and the room tilted 2 inches to the left, and I grabbed the edge of my mattress hard enough to feel the seam in my palm. My vision blurred at the center. My ears rang. Whatever that senior had forced me to swallow, it had finished loading. I was still gripping the mattress when the door swung open. Standing in the doorway, red-eyed, lips split from Jake's kick, phone held screen out like evidence at a sentencing hearing, was the senior himself. He looked at Mason, at Tyler, at Jake. Then his eyes found mine and stayed there, and in them was the specific expression of a man who has decided that if he's burning tonight, he's burning the whole block down with him. You want to know who your roommate really is? His voice was low and controlled and absolutely deliberate. Ask him about the 3 girls he's been pretending to be. The room went completely still. The only sound left was my own pulse, too loud, too fast, filling up the silence like water filling a room. I looked at him. He looked at me. My face was on fire. My peripheral vision was soft. My hands weren't entirely steady. But somewhere underneath all of that, underneath the heat and the noise and the 3 pairs of eyes turning slowly back toward me, something in my chest went very quiet, very cold, and started building the plan. The plan was simple. Plans are always simple when you strip away the panic and look at the actual pieces on the board. Piece 1. The senior had just admitted out loud in front of 3 witnesses that he had forced me to swallow something without my consent. He'd said it like it was nothing, like it was a footnote. In front of Mason, Tyler, and Jake, the 3 people in this building who, as of 60 seconds ago, had every reason in the world to be done with me. But here's the thing about people who have every reason to be done with you. They're not the same as people who have every reason to help someone else hurt you. There's a difference. I needed them to feel it. I watched it happen in real time. Mason, who'd been staring at me with that quiet, hollow expression, turned slowly toward the doorway. Something moved through his face. Not forgiveness, not warmth, nothing like that. Something colder, more focused. The specific look of a person who has just registered a threat that outranks whatever grievance he was already carrying. Tyler had closed his phone. He was watching the senior with the careful, measuring stillness of someone running a full cost-benefit analysis in 6 seconds flat. Jake's head had lifted from his knees. "What did you give him?" Mason asked. Very quietly. The senior shrugged. Actually shrugged, chin tilted, one shoulder rolling up like the question bored him. Something to help him relax. He needs to learn some gratitude. And there it was. I want you to understand something about this guy. He'd moved through his entire life on the assumption that his size, his seniority, and his willingness to push harder than other people made him permanently untouchable. He wasn't calculated about it. He was the kind of cruel that comes from never once being made to pay for anything. Reflexive, careless, genuinely confused when the world didn't rearrange itself around his convenience. He looked at the three of them and saw underclassmen he could dismiss. He looked at me and saw someone he'd already beaten. He had absolutely no idea he'd just handed me everything I needed. "What did you give him?" Tyler repeated, and it wasn't a question. It was the opening line of a formal proceeding. "Back off." The senior pointed at Tyler, one finger extended like he was directing traffic. "This has nothing to do with you." "He lives here," Jake said from the floor. His voice was flat in a way I'd never heard from him before. Jake, who teared up at nature documentaries and kept a little succulent on the windowsill, and once spent 40 minutes talking me through a rough night without asking for anything in return. That flatness didn't belong to Jake. It belonged to someone who had finished making a decision. "This has everything to do with us." The senior scanned the room, found nothing useful in any of our faces, and laughed. Short, dismissive, already turning toward the door. He stopped, because standing in the hallway, arms folded, expression balanced somewhere between exhausted and ready to incinerate someone, was Priya. Priya was our floor RA. Third year, pre-law, possessed of the particular energy of someone who had cataloged every possible variety of dormitory disaster and kept the documentation in a color-coded binder. She had the hallway hearing of a bat and the institutional memory of a federal archivist. I had, on no fewer than 6 prior occasions, considered her the single most inconvenient person on this floor. Tonight, she was the most beautiful person I had ever seen in my life. She looked at the senior, at his split lip, at me, flushed, visibly unsteady, gripping my mattress like it was the only fixed point in the room, at the gift bag still cradled in Jake's lap, at Tyler, who had his phone out again and was, I realized, already recording. "Nobody move," she said. Her full name was Priya Anand, and she had heard everything from the hallway. She told us that plainly, without drama, the way she told you everything, like a person reading from a document she'd already prepared. "I heard you say you gave him something without his consent," she said, still looking at the senior. "I heard you say it." His confidence flickered. Just the smallest tremor, like a signal going in and out. "You heard nothing. Tyler's been recording since you walked in." She pulled out her own phone. "So between the two of us, I think we have sufficient documentation to make this a very long semester for you." She tilted her head slightly. "You might want to think carefully about your next sentence." The senior's jaw tightened. He looked at Tyler, at me, at Mason, who had gone very still in the way that large, patient animals go still when they're deciding something. "Priya," I said. My voice came out steadier than I had any right to expect. "He forced me to swallow something about 15 minutes ago. I don't know what it was. I've been feeling off since." She was already dialing. The senior looked at me then, and something in his face shifted. Not remorse, nothing as useful as that, but the specific delayed dawning of a person who has realized, slightly too late, that they've miscalculated the room. "You should go," Tyler said to him pleasantly, conversationally. "Right now before security arrives. Or you can stay, and I'll make sure this is the first agenda item at Monday's student council session." A pause, which I chair. The senior left. He left quickly, without another word, and the door swung shut behind him, and the room let out a breath it had been holding for a long time. Priya stayed for 23 minutes. I know because Tyler timed it. She took down my account of the evening in precise sequence, recorded the description of the substance, confirmed Tyler's recording was preserved as evidence, and told me campus health needed to see me before midnight. She looked at each of my roommates with an expression that said she was aware this room had substantial pre-existing context she wasn't being briefed on, and that she was making a professional choice to table it. When she left, the four of us were alone again. Nobody spoke for a while. The room felt structurally different. Nothing resolved, nothing forgiven, the catfishing still hanging in the air like smoke. But the weight of it was distributed differently now. Something had shifted. The geometry of the confrontation had changed. Mason sat down on his bed. His actual bed. Not the pacing strip he'd been wearing into the floor. He looked at his hands. Then, grudgingly, like the words had to be physically extracted from him, he said, "You feeling all right?" "Getting there," I said. Jake set the gift bag down carefully, like he was setting down something that might shatter. He said nothing. Tyler was looking at the ceiling, which I had learned meant he was thinking, which meant I had roughly 90 seconds before he produced a sentence so precise and so accurate that I would have no good answer for it. I used the 90 seconds. I thought about how this had started. 4 weeks ago, Tuesday night, bored and restless and spectacularly overconfident. I'd built the first account in under an hour, chosen photos carefully, written a bio that felt real without being traceable. I hadn't even thought of it as a prank, more like an experiment. A question I wanted answered. Could I do it? Could I build something convincing enough that people who saw my face every day across the breakfast table wouldn't connect the dots? I'd given it a week, maybe less. I figured they'd get bored, or distracted by midterms, or suspicious of a stranger who appeared from nowhere with no mutual connections and no history. Instead, they'd stayed. They'd showed up night after night in the small hours, texting things they probably didn't say out loud to anyone. They'd remembered details I'd mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. They'd been, and this is the part I hadn't planned for, genuinely kind. Consistently, specifically, unremarkably kind, the way people only are when no one's watching and there's nothing to perform. I'd set out to test whether they were easy to fool. And somehow, sideways, accidentally, without a single moment where I consciously made the choice, I'd ended up finding out exactly who they were. Tyler, who built a full forensic case because he needed to be certain before he said anything. Jake, who bought a gift because he had been paying attention for weeks. Mason, who was furious and hurt, and in the middle of all of it still asked if I was okay. I had spent 4 weeks constructing a person they'd never meet, and somehow in the process, I'd met them. The real versions. The ones they didn't put on in front of each other. I hadn't been running a prank. I'd been running, without knowing it, the most thorough character study of my life. And now I was sitting here with the results in my hands, completely certain of what they meant, and absolutely no idea what to do with them. The only thing I knew for certain was this. What happened next wasn't going to be about the catfishing anymore. It was going to be about whether I was worth the same kind of honesty I'd just spent 4 weeks collecting from them. Tyler broke the ceiling stare first. "Campus health," he said. Not a suggestion. The tone he used when he was moving a motion to a vote, and the outcome was already decided. Now. Before whatever he gave you gets further into your system. "I know," I said. "I'll go with you," Jake said from the floor. He said it quietly, like he wasn't sure he still had the standing to offer, but he was offering anyway. Mason stood up without a word and grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door. That was his answer. I want to tell you that I had some eloquent response prepared. Something that acknowledged the weight of the moment, the strange arithmetic of being helped by 3 people I'd spent a month deceiving. The truth is I just nodded and pulled on my shoes, and the 4 of us walked out into the hallway together in the specific silence of people who have more to say to each other than they currently have words for. Priya was waiting by the elevator. Of course she was. Campus health kept me for 2 hours. The doctor on duty, a tired, methodical woman who had clearly seen stranger things on a Friday night, drew blood, asked me to describe the substance and delivery method 4 separate times, and told me with admirable bluntness that the compound appeared to be a mild sedative. The kind sold legally in certain supplements, but absolutely not meant to be administered to someone without their knowledge or agreement. She used the word administered. She also used the phrase documented incident, which she explained meant that a formal report was now attached to my student file, and, separately, to a pending review by the Dean of Students' office. She said it like she was reading a weather forecast. I found that deeply comforting. Tyler sat in the waiting area for the full 2 hours and spent approximately 90 minutes of that time on his phone. I could see him through the window in the door. Still, focused, the expression he wore when he was writing something that needed to be precise. Jake fell asleep in a chair at the 45-minute mark, which under different circumstances would have been funny. Mason bought 3 things from the vending machine, ate none of them, and left them stacked on the table in front of Jake like a small offering. When I came out, Tyler looked up and said, "I sent the recording to the Dean of Students, the Student Conduct Board, and the Campus Safety Office. Time-stamped, original file, no edits. I CC'd Priya on all 3. I sat down next to him. When did you do that? About an hour ago. He paused. I also found 2 other students who filed informal complaints against him in the past 18 months. They never went anywhere because there was no documentation. He turned his phone toward me. There's documentation now. I looked at the screen. The emails were meticulous, organized, clearly written, with the recording attached and a brief factual summary that contained no editorializing whatsoever. Tyler had written it the way someone writes something they intend to survive every level of institutional review. "Tyler?" I said. "Don't." He put the phone away. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because he walked into our room and put something in your body without asking, and that can't be a thing that just happens, and then nobody does anything about it." He looked straight ahead. "Those are different things." "I know," I said. "But thank you anyway." He didn't answer. But he didn't move away either. By the time we got back to the room, it was past 1 in the morning. Jake had woken up disoriented in the waiting room, remembered everything, and gone quiet again in the specific way of someone reassembling their emotional situation after sleep. Mason walked the whole route back without saying anything, and then sat on his bed and looked at me with the expression I'd been dreading for 2 hours. Not angry anymore, just tired and waiting. I sat on my own bed. I thought about all the ways I could approach this. The partial admission, the reframing, the version where I led with the senior's actions and kept the catfishing as a secondary issue, let the sympathy from one soften the landing of the other. I had built 3 separate personas from scratch in under a week. I knew how to construct a narrative. I knew how to manage a room. I looked at Mason's face and I just couldn't. "I did it," I said. All 3 accounts, every message, all of it was me. No one spoke. I started it because I thought it would be funny, or interesting. I told myself it was an experiment. I thought you'd figure it out in a week and we'd all have a weird story to tell. I looked at my hands. You didn't figure it out. And instead of stopping, I kept going. Because I kept telling myself I was about to stop, and I never actually stopped. Jake was looking at the window. "I didn't expect you to..." I stopped. Started again. "I didn't expect you to be like that. The way you were, in those conversations. I thought I'd see what people are like when they think no one's watching, and I'd find out you were exactly who everyone is. A little performative, a little self-interested going through the motions." I exhaled. "That's not what I found." Mason's jaw moved. "What did you find?" "You remembered things. All 3 of you. Things I mentioned once, weeks earlier, that I'd already half forgotten. You checked in when you said you would. You were honest. In a way that cost you something. Jake cried about his dad on a Tuesday night to a stranger on the internet. And I was the stranger and I didn't deserve that conversation, and I have thought about it every day since." Jake closed his eyes briefly. "I know this doesn't fix it," I said. "I'm not saying this to fix it. I'm saying it because you asked me to be honest, and I have been dishonest to all 3 of you for a month, and the least I can do is give you the real version right now, even if it makes everything worse." The room was very quiet. Then Mason said, "Why did you break up with us?" Something caught in my chest. "Because it was getting real, and I didn't know how to be real back." He nodded slowly, like that was an answer he recognized. Like he'd felt the shape of it before, from the inside, and knew what it looked like when it came from someone else. The Dean of Students' office contacted the senior the following morning. I know because Tyler, who had apparently become the unofficial case manager of the entire situation, received a confirmation email at 9 a.m. and forwarded it to the rest of us without comment. By Sunday afternoon, the senior had been placed on interim suspension pending a full conduct review. By Sunday evening, word had reached the floor through channels I didn't track and didn't ask about. By Monday morning, the 2 students Tyler had found, the ones with the old informal complaints, had both submitted formal statements. The senior had walked into our room on Friday night holding his phone like a weapon, absolutely certain that he was the most dangerous person in the building. He had not accounted for Tyler's binder instincts. He had not accounted for Priya's hallway hearing. He had not accounted for the fact that the person he'd chosen to make an example of happened to live with a student council president who CC'd 3 institutional offices before midnight and kept clean timestamps on everything. He had looked at the 4 of us and seen an easy win. He had not understood, not for a single second, that he was not the one running the board. I thought about that on Monday morning, sitting on my bed while Mason made coffee in the corner and Jake reorganized his succulents on the windowsill, and Tyler read something on his laptop with the focused silence of a person who has finished one task and is already 3 items into the next. I thought about how the senior had come back through that door convinced that the information he was carrying gave him power, and how he'd handed it to us instead, without knowing it, the moment he walked in. I had spent 4 weeks studying these 3 people. I had mapped their habits, their rhythms, the specific ways they were soft and the specific ways they were not. What I hadn't planned, what I genuinely, completely had not seen coming, was that they'd been paying the same kind of attention back, not to a fake account, to me, the real one. And tomorrow, I was going to have to figure out what to do with that. Tomorrow came faster than I was ready for. It came in the form of a knock on our door at 10 in the morning. Not Priya this time, but a student conduct officer with a clipboard and a lanyard, informing me that my presence was requested at a preliminary hearing regarding Friday's incident. Tyler was listed as a supporting witness. Priya had already submitted her written account. The 2 students with prior complaints had confirmed their participation. The senior was going to be in that room. I want to tell you I walked in calm. I want to tell you I had rehearsed it and was prepared. The truth is, I sat outside the hearing room on a wooden bench for 11 minutes and my hands were doing something I couldn't fully control. And Mason, who had come without being asked and sat down next to me without saying anything, eventually just put his forearm against mine and left it there. No words, just weight, just presence. That was enough. The hearing lasted an hour and 40 minutes. I don't need to walk you through all of it. What I'll tell you is this. Tyler presented the recording with the kind of quiet, methodical precision that made the conduct officer lean forward in her chair and start taking notes by hand. He had a timeline. He had the metadata. He had the confirmation from Campus Health. He presented it the way someone presents a case they've been building for weeks, even though he'd had less than 48 hours. The senior's position deteriorated in real time. I watched it happen from across the table. The initial confidence, the dismissive posture, the moment somewhere around minute 20 when he seemed to understand that the room was not going to move in his direction and there was nothing left to perform for. He tried a version of events where the substance was a supplement he'd personally vouched for and genuinely believed was harmless. The conduct officer asked him to provide documentation of the product. He could not. He tried a version where my own behavior had been provocative. Tyler produced the recording of the hallway and played the specific 30-second segment. The conduct officer wrote something down and did not look up. By the end, the senior wasn't dismissive anymore. He wasn't contemptuous. He was just a person sitting in a chair who had finally run out of architecture to hide behind, and what was left underneath was smaller than he'd wanted anyone to see. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be clear about that. I felt tired and relieved, and something else that took me a while to name, something like grief almost, for the version of the situation where none of this had needed to happen. For the Friday night that could have just been a Friday night. But I also felt for the first time in days like I was standing on level ground. The senior was suspended for the remainder of the semester pending a full disciplinary review. The conduct officer told me I could expect a formal follow-up within 2 weeks. She thanked Tyler by name for the quality of his documentation. Outside in the hallway, Tyler allowed himself exactly 1 moment of visible satisfaction. A single slow exhale, eyes closed, like releasing pressure from a valve. Then he straightened his jacket and became Tyler again. "You're terrifying," I told him. "I know," he said, without any particular modesty. That afternoon, the 4 of us ended up on the roof. It wasn't planned. Mason had gone up for air after the hearing, and Jake had followed because Jake followed. And Tyler and I arrived separately and found them already there, leaning against the railing, looking out over a campus that had no idea any of this had happened. We stood there for a while without talking. The city was doing its usual thing in every direction. The sky was a flat, indifferent blue. Then Jake said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah," I said. "When you were..." He paused, organizing it. "When you were talking to me, as her, did you ever feel bad?" I thought about lying. Old habit. I let it pass. "Yes," I said. "Around week 2. You told me about your dad, and I sat in this room at 2 in the morning and felt like the worst person alive. And then I told myself I'd end it that week, and then I didn't. Jake nodded. Not forgiving me exactly, just receiving it. Why didn't you? Mason asked. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the skyline. But the question was, for me, I took a long breath. Because ending it meant admitting what I'd done. And admitting what I'd done meant I had to explain why I'd done it. And the real reason, the actual honest reason, was that I was lonely and I wanted to know if you were real. All three of you. If the versions of you that I saw every day were all there was, or if there was more underneath. I exhaled. There was more. There was a lot more. And by the time I knew that, I was already in too deep to know how to come back. The roof was quiet for a moment. Then Mason turned to look at me, and his expression was not the closed, careful thing it had been all weekend. It was open in a way that I think cost him something to show. You could have just talked to us, he said. I know. We're not... He stopped. Started again. We're not that hard to talk to. I know that now, I said. I didn't know it then. He held my gaze for a moment. Then he turned back to the skyline. But something had settled in him that hadn't been settled before, and I felt it the way you feel a shift in temperature. Not dramatically, just as a fact. Tyler sat down on the concrete ledge, which he did with the contained, precise energy of someone who has finished the day's work and is allowing himself 5 minutes of unstructured existence. For the record, he said, your writing was good. The personas were believable. A pause. Don't do it again. I won't, I said. I know, he said, because now we know what to look for. Jake, against all reasonable odds, laughed. It came out surprised, like it had escaped before he could stop it. And then Mason made a sound that was almost a laugh. And then somehow, in the specific, exhausted, slightly unhinged way of people who have been through too much in too short a time, we were all laughing. Up on that roof in the flat blue afternoon, at nothing and at everything. It lasted maybe 15 seconds. Then it passed, and we were back to who we were. But something between us had changed permanently, the way a bone heals stronger at the break. Here's what I know now that I didn't know 4 weeks ago. I thought I was running an experiment in observation. I thought the fake accounts were a one-way mirror, me watching them completely unaware. I thought distance was the same as clarity. I thought if I could just see people without them seeing me back, I'd finally understand something true about human nature. What I actually did was build a mirror and aim it at myself. Everything I wrote for those personas, the things I had them say, the details I gave them, the vulnerabilities I carefully constructed, was drawn from something real, something mine. The loneliness was mine. The need to know if people were worth trusting was mine. The fear of showing up as myself and being found wanting, that was mine too. And it was so present in every message I sent through those fake accounts that 3 people I lived with read it clearly through a fictional stranger and responded with kindness. They weren't enchanted by a persona I'd built. They were responding to something I'd accidentally put in it. Something true. Mason, who pats your shoulder before he knows you need it. Tyler, who documents the world with obsessive precision because he believes that what can be proven cannot be easily dismissed. Jake, who buys the gift because he listened, and shows up because showing up is the only language he trusts completely. I spent 4 weeks trying to test them. They passed. The question that stayed with me, the one I'm still sitting with, is whether I passed too. Not the catfishing part. That was a failure, plainly and without mitigation. I know that. I mean the part after. When the room was cornered and the exits were closing and everything I'd hidden was about to surface. Whether I was capable of doing the thing I'd been too afraid to do for a month. Being honest. Being seen. Showing up as myself and finding out if that was enough. I think about the senior, walking back through that door with his phone held out like a weapon, certain that exposure was the most dangerous thing in the room. He didn't understand that I'd been building toward it the whole time. Not planned, not strategic, but real in a way that none of the fake accounts ever were. The most dangerous thing in that room wasn't the secret getting out. It was the possibility of what happened after. 3 people who knew exactly what I'd done, and chose to stay anyway. Chose to sit on a roof and laugh about it. Chose to show up for a hearing without being asked. chose to press a forearm against mine on a bench outside a door I was afraid to walk through. Here's the lesson, and I'm not going to dress it up. Hiding is not the same as being safe. Watching from behind glass is not the same as understanding. You cannot know if people are real without letting them know you first, without being, yourself, the thing that can be known. I tried to find out who they were by becoming someone I wasn't. What I found, in the end, was who I was. And it turned out that was exactly what they'd been waiting for.
And for those of you who made it to the end of the video, comment below and let me know what you thought of our story. Fish?
Like this video, share the channel with more people who enjoy history just like you, and see you next time. Lars.
Also, comment down below which game you want to see us play in the next video. See ya!